Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Everett. I'm an assistant dean for the Honors College at Rutgers University, Camden. I'm also a part-time lecturer for the Camden College of Arts and Sciences within the Leadership Studies minor. Also, this semester, I'm a part-time lecturer for Rutgers Newark's Executive Masters in Public Administration program. A little bit more about myself. I'm a staff senator for Rutgers University Camden, and I'm also a two-time alum, once from the Camden College of Arts and Sciences as an undergraduate student, and then the second from the graduate school Camden. And what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is about my Intro to Leadership Studies course. This is a elementary course within the College of Arts and Sciences at Rutgers Camden, where we talk about some very elementary approaches to leadership. But then also models and theories related to leadership so that students might be able to start forming their own paths towards leading their own lives and becoming leaders of tomorrow. So when I usually begin teaching my course at the first day of the semester, I usually talk about how I love teaching Intro to Leadership. And this is mostly because I view leadership as one of the most important things for all students in higher education to be studying today. Um, it's something that all of us need to practice because it's not just some people's jobs. This is something that every single one of us needs to engage with a little bit, if not all of the time. So one of the cool, interesting facts about leadership from the very beginning is that leadership is not positional. Leadership is something that every single person who is involved with a process can engage with. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO, it doesn't matter if you're the president of whatever, as long as you are involved with a process, if you're a part of a team for a job, you can be engaging in leadership too. And of course, uh, the entire 16-week course that I am so lucky to teach uh, goes into the ways in which you can properly address your position with engaging with leadership. One of the not so fun things with leadership is that we are facing a little bit of a leadership crisis. So, in quotes, leadership crisis, according to the scholars, where leadership has become this thing that so few people wish to engage with anymore. And there's a variety of reasons why fewer and fewer people are looking to engage with leadership. Some of that has to do with younger generations being exceptionally more busy people. Busier in terms of jobs, busier in terms of regular life commitments, but also busier in terms of their own personal endeavors with family, with friends, and then also with the internet. Not so much from a distraction point of view, but we are constantly receiving more and more information through the internet at a faster rate. So it's tougher for younger generations to consume this information, process it, and still have the mental energy to go forward with the regular tasks of their day. So whether it's raising a family, whether it's going to college as a full-time student, maybe a part-time or a full-time job too, at the end of the day, you're pretty tired. So it's very easy for people of all age groups to say, that thing over there is totally somebody else's job. And I don't have time to deal with whatever that thing is. So we do face a little bit of a crisis. And one of the easiest examples I usually talk about in my class is you might live on a street, and in that neighborhood, there's a chance that the street light was out, or there's a pothole in the middle of the street. And there might be 30 families or so that live on a regular suburban street, maybe more. How many times a day do people who live on that street constantly go past that broken streetlight or go past that pothole? And nobody says anything about it other than to their spouse or to their family. They really need to fix that streetlight, or they really need to fix that pothole. And who is the they? That's the important thing to ask. Who is they? And of course, that is a little bit of an educational piece. People have to understand what the bureaucracy of a local government might be. But whether it's a broken streetlight or a phone or a pothole in the road, sometimes it just takes a simple phone call to somebody to get that thing addressed. And if I'm ignoring the problem, thinking that they have to take care of it, chances are all of my neighbors down the road are thinking about the same thing. Somebody else is going to take care of this. So one of the things that we talk about in Intro to Leadership is about taking charge of a situation, even though you yourself are not able to handle that situation. So this is going to be a little bit of a conversation about things that future graduates can use to be really good candidates for the job market as people seek to graduate within the next 2-ish months, month and a half or so. But this is content that is very useful for any current Rutgers student or anybody who has long graduated and is thinking about a career change, because your capacity to understand leadership will help you navigate not just other people and other systems, but it will help you understand yourself much better. The other final quick note that I wanted to make about why it is important for more people to study and to earn a leadership education is because when we do have a situation where more and more people are constantly deferring leadership to other people, saying, that's not my job, I don't have time for that, that allows fewer and fewer people to be the only people making decisions. And this could be in relation to government, this could be in relation to a business, or perhaps a nonprofit. It could even be a situation with your friend group. You might have a large friend group, and maybe it's only 2 or 3 people who are making decisions all the time about what restaurant to go to or what vacation the group is going to take. And you yourself might be very unhappy with the usual recommendations. So as we talk about these first few chapters of my intro course, we are going to hopefully help you to pave a narrative to eliminate the leadership crisis in your personal life, and perhaps see where that goes into our governmental structures and our business structures as well. So I use Understanding Leadership for College Students Who Wish to Make a Difference by Susan Comives and her team. We usually use the 3rd edition of this textbook, and what's really cool about this textbook, as if something's cool about a textbook, there is. This textbook, the 3rd edition, is available to read online for all Rutgers University students. If you sign into the Rutgers University library system, you have complete access to this entire textbook. So I really recommend that you take a peek. Leadership for College Students Who Wish to Make a Difference by Susan Comives and her team. So chapter 1 and chapter 2 are somewhat similar, where we're talking about defining the problem. The problem, as I previously talked about, is fewer and fewer people wish to engage with leadership. So that is an issue, but then we start moving into some very early definitions of leadership. Over human history, leadership has been viewed differently. It is a constantly changing format. It's a constantly changing paradigm as well. Um, so just to put some historical context behind leadership, there are ancient definitions of leadership where if you heard them today, you would be like, oh my gosh, that is the worst thing I've ever heard of. We shouldn't consider leaders like that. So one example is the great man approach to leadership, where there's hereditary um, traits that help to define a leader. So things like being tall once upon a time used to make you the best candidate for being leader of the village or leader of the town. Other desirable traits could be a specific hair color or a specific eye color. And then something that does transcend into modern day is specific skin color. That has long been documented throughout history in the narrative of leadership. So as we start to understand historical approaches to leadership, and that's just one example, you might say, that sounds pretty terrible. I don't think that we should determine a leader based upon height. I don't think that we should determine a leader based upon hair color, skin color, eye color. So that makes me beg you, my virtual class, I beg you the question, how should we determine a leader? So this starts pushing into chapter 3 of this textbook, where Susan Comives and her team introduce us to what they refer to as the relational leadership model. And the relational leadership model is defined as people together attempting to accomplish positive change. And it's set up where there's 5 components. So the first component, number 1, is making sure we understand our purpose. So if we go to do something, it could be anything, and we haven't really fleshed out what our purpose is, where are we going to go? We're probably not going to yield a good result at all if we haven't really thought about what our goal is, what's our purpose in this very initiative. The purpose is then surrounded by 3 elements. First is inclusion. It's very important to make sure that your purpose is then followed up by an inclusive process to make sure that all people, all perspectives, and lived experiences have an opportunity to influence the purpose and yield the result. Also, our ethics. Ethics surround our purpose. If we are not familiar with ethics, if we are not confident in our own ability to make sound decisions in ethical ways, our purpose and our final goal, our final product, will probably be corrupted in some way, in a moral perspective at the least. So around the purpose, we have inclusion, we have ethics, and then we also have empowerment. So as a group sets out to accomplish its purpose, achieve its goal, the group members, every single one of the group members, needs to be empowered in some capacity. If we're going to choose a hierarchical approach to achieving our goal, where only the top person with the top title gets to say things, that's not an empowering situation. So every single person who is a part of a team should be empowered to bring something to the table. And for anybody who is watching this, maybe you're somebody who usually is the note taker of a group, or you're taking the minutes for a meeting just so that you're able to reach out to people later on. Don't think for any reason that you are not able to provide a suggestion. Within the university setting, of course, that's much more of a comfortable area where I can say that there is nothing wrong with asking a question at any time. But I understand in business realms and so on and so forth, that might not always be the case. But if you posit an inquiry, I'd like to inquire about the plan to go forward with the next business proposal. You're usually setting yourself up for a good way to be heard, just inquiring about a situation or a future endeavor. So back to the relational leadership model, we have the purpose in the center, and that purpose is surrounded by ethics, inclusion, and empowerment. All right. And then everything is surrounded by the process. There has to be some sort of process guiding the relational leadership model and any endeavor that you are going to end up pursuing. So the purpose and the process are very related. So if your purpose is not well defined, your process is probably not going to be well defined. So all of this is just to say that Susan Comides and her team in their proposal of the relational leadership model help you to choose how you are going to define your own leadership, how you are going to define your own self as a leader. So after all of the definitions are finished, usually exam one is a tough one because there's a lot to remember. After we learn about the relational leadership model, one thing I love about this course, in the way that it is facilitated through the text, is that the next two chapters, chapters 4 and 5, really get to the finer details about why it is important for all college students and frankly all humans to, for lack of a better term, I will say it's important for us to get over ourselves in order for us to understand ourselves better. So specifically for men, sometimes we view it as a non-masculine thing to understand yourself, to get in touch with your feelings, and so on and so forth. And absolutely, that is a shame. But through the teaching of this text and through this course, I double down over and over and over again about how important it is for you to first understand yourself before you begin working with other people. And that's exactly how the text is set up. Chapter 4 is titled Understanding Yourself, and chapter 5 is titled Understanding Others. So as you seek to understand yourself, there are a variety of things that you can do to understand what some of your own morals and some of your own values are. This is something that all college graduates should practice to some extent. The reason why is because you could face the opportunity where you graduate from your institution and you get that first full-time job. And especially under some crazy times, such as a global pandemic, you might be taking that first job no matter what. And I don't blame you, I really don't. But under more normal times, when we're taking that first job without really understanding our own morals and our own values, and not comparing those to the values of this workplace, that's where you could become burnt out, disenfranchised, and sort of, floating in nowhere land for the first few years of your career. So it is always my hope through understanding yourself, you might be able to prevent that. And there are tons of ways throughout a undergraduate academic career that you can learn more things about yourself so that maybe you don't make some type of employment mistake with one of your first jobs. One of those opportunities is making sure that you get an internship while you are an undergraduate student. Internships are wonderful opportunities for you to get your foot into a door. That's what higher education professionals talk about all the time. And I think we're now starting to talk more about the fact that internship opportunities are also great experiences for you to understand what you don't want to do for a career. And that's totally fine. It really is. Some other experiences for you to understand yourself a little bit more is to practice what chapter 4 talks about, regular reflection. So this might sound very elementary to some folks, but reflection is one of the most important things that any leader of any kind can do. And whether you're trying to be a leader or not, reflection is important for you as a person. The reason why is, very similar to what I talked about in the very beginning of this lecture, where all of us, no matter what age group we identify with, we are a busier people at this point. The internet is giving us information all the time, rapid fire. The TV is giving us information all of the time, rapid fire. But outside of the information overload, you're still waking up at a certain time to go to school, to go to work. You're still going to school and going to work. Maybe you're an undergraduate student and you're taking 5 or 6 classes in perhaps very different fields. So that's a lot to make sure that we're keeping account of. Then you have all of your friends. You might have a significant other. You might have family that you're also trying to make sure you're keeping in touch with. So by the time it gets to be 9 or 10 o'clock at night, usually what we end up doing is saying, wow, what a day, right? And we usually turn on the TV, pursue Netflix or Hulu just for some mindless entertainment before we fall asleep. And all throughout that day, you're going, and then you finally get home and you need to relax, you need to calm down. But so few people ever stop for a half hour, maybe 20 minutes, just to think about how the day went, whether it was a good day or a bad day. And far too often, we're only thinking about how the day went when it was a bad day. We should be thinking about how the day went all of the time, because you should think about how your conversation with a coworker went. You should think about how a conversation with a significant other went, just to see whether it did go well or not. Because when we're just going and going and going, and we're not stepping back to reflect, we might not ever realize that we totally made a mistake in one of our interactions with other people. And if we're not identifying that mistake, we're likely going to repeat that mistake again. So personal auto-reflection is very important for the workforce in general, but especially if you're seeking to be a leader. So if you're a decision maker, you should be practicing reflection often. Now, one of the small problems with auto-reflection is the fact that you are the only person telling you what went well and what didn't go well. And this sort of feeds into a bigger leadership problem where there's a little bit of a siloing effect in terms of you're telling yourself what you want to hear. You are creating your own personal version of groupthink through reflection. But one of the ways that we can, deal with that problem is by making sure that we identify 1 or 2 people who we know, they're going to be very honest with us. They're going to be in our corner no matter what. They're going to be honest, but they're not going to be mean about it. And once we identify those people, it is important for us as leaders and as people in the workforce to seek their feedback, because their feedback should not be something that just solidifies us to feel better. Their feedback should be something that, enlightens us to actually, when you said that the other day, I don't think you realized it, but the whole room went really quiet because your joke is not good and nobody understands what your joke is. So that's just one small example, but through, reflection, you also have to consider feedback as well. So as you go forward with understanding yourself, there's also some behavioral things that you have to reckon with. There might be things about other people that drive you absolutely bananas. And, to some extent, that's fine. That's a very human thing. Some people think that, gum chewing is just terrible and, horrible. Other people consider something so simple as like nervous pen clicking to be remarkably distracting. And if you never realize what some of these things are, um, you might be poised to make an error in the workplace where somebody is clicking their pen at the desk next to you and you kind of freak out and you then corrupt the workplace where it's like, where are you coming from with these crazy emotions about my pen clicking? So if you do stop to recognize the fact that something so simple as pen clicking is annoying to you, you might be able to approach an individual differently than just saying, oh man, I'm going to freak out because this is annoying. You might be able to address the person in a more respectable manner, saying, hey, listen, um, the pen stuff is kind of driving me crazy. It bothers me. Uh, could you try to not click your pen all of the time? So it sounds really silly, but these things happen in the workplace all of the time. And then HR has to be involved, and these are easy things that we could have avoided if people just understood a little bit more about themselves. Um, as we transition to chapter 5 for understanding others, what's really important through the understanding of others is sort of these interpersonal things that, again, we don't always wish to think about. How is our emotional intelligence going to set us up for success or failure? And of course, that requires us to first know what emotional intelligence is. So, somewhat, it is reading a room. Uh, it is understanding other people. It is knowing these people who you work with. But emotional intelligence should be a more emphasized and instructed tool for all future college graduates because you might walk into work one day and you might say something that you think is harmless, but you might forget that that harmless thing actually does affect a coworker so much more than you would ever understand. Um, Something so simple as like, talking about a cat or a dog. You might think, oh, I saw this dog on the internet the other day. It was a funny meme. But as it turns out, your coworker's dog of 15 years just died. And it's a really sad time for them. Maybe bringing up a dog meme was not the best idea. So, this sort of thing helps to inform us on how we can use emotional intelligence to avoid conflicts in the future. Um, Related to emotional intelligence is the discussion about microaggressions. I know within student affairs programming, discussions on microaggressions are very popular, but we shouldn't just limit this discussion to student affairs programming. It is something that should be in professional discussions and general academic discussions as well. So microaggressions are very small things that usually are not meant to be harmless, just simple comments. But the reception of these comments continuously puts some people into a minority or affects them in a way where it's like, why are you talking about my hair? Like, thanks for telling me I have a good hair day. But to that person, they might have gone to work feeling very self conscious about the fact that they're probably not having a good hair day. So microaggressions are something that we should always make sure that we're trying to avoid. And one way that we can avoid microaggressions is by making sure we're limiting the use of metaphors, limiting the use of humor in professional meetings. Sometimes people do say that, a joke might be the most necessary thing in a professional meeting. But if we don't understand other people's senses of humor, we might be very well in a good position to offend everybody else in the room. And we also might just make ourselves look silly because nobody understands what the joke was. So that sort of gets into the leadership and communication part of the course. But nonetheless, it's very important for us to understand. So throughout these first 5 chapters, which you all have access to, I think that's pretty cool. You can learn some of the historical definitions of leadership. You can learn about historical, or sometimes referred to as routine, approaches to leadership. You can learn what it means to be a participant rather than a follower. We usually hear this leader-follower paradigm. The book and the course sort of change that to say, you're not a follower, we're going to call you a participant, because followers is a very complacent term. It's a very, complacent term. So we're going to use the word participant in order to further incentivize people's participation in these processes. You can learn about the participant follower struggle. You can learn about the relational leadership model, understanding yourself. And what I've talked about in chapter 4 is just a very, very tiny blip of what's there for you. And then, of course, understanding others and working with others in chapter 5. Throughout these first 5 chapters, if you have the free time to read those, that will be very beneficial to you as you begin some of your first professional experiences, so that you might avoid some common errors for your first professional experiences. And these first 5 chapters, at the very least, might position you to really take off in the workplace, rather than sort of being, flat for 5 years and then starting to see new roles and responsibilities. So again, I hope that this was a useful time for you to understand why leadership is important for all of us to understand, why leadership is necessary for all of us to practice. And I hope that, through the text that's available to you online or your own investigation, I hope that you do try to obtain a leadership education in some form. Especially these days, I am constantly on my email. So if you have some sort of leadership question that you would like to have answered, please feel free to email me. My email address is be99@camden.rutgers.edu. I'm happy to share my thoughts on any situational problems that you might be having, whether it is in the workplace or if it is interpersonal, like a friend group. Or sometimes students ask me, like, what should I do about this relationship? I think that it's toxic. Of course, I advise you to talk with your Dean of Students office about that specific problem more so than me, but I'm happy to share very elementary thoughts. So I wish all of you well. I hope that you're all staying safe. You're getting outside when you can in a safe way. And I congratulate the graduating class of 2020. I'm very excited for you to enter the workforce really soon. Take care.